Welcome, congregation, to another episode of Preaching Prophets, the only place where we turn financial gospel into actionable reality and strip away the heresy of bad money habits. I am your host, and today we are diving deep into the ultimate engine of predictable generational wealth multifamily real estate. But before we bring our witness to the pulpit, this sermon is brought to you by the partners who keep our lights on and our vision clear, Diamond Eye Visuals and Token Tellers. Today, we are talking about the ultimate engine of predictable generational wealth, multifamily real estate. Too many financial gurus out there preach from a pulpit of high risk stocks or overnight crypto miracles. But today we are getting our hands dirty in the foundation of the American heartland. A lot of people think you need millions of dollars or a corporate hedge fund backing you to build a real estate empire. They think you have to live on the coast to see real returns. That is a false prophecy. The truth is, some of the most stable, cash flowing, wealth building miracles are happening right now in the duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes of the Midwest. Our guest today is a living testament to this truth. He didn't inherit a fortune. He didn't get lucky on a lottery ticket. He built his foundation brick by brick, door by door. Today, he sits on a portfolio of three Midwest duplexes, six door of consistent, wealth generating cash flow. Take us back to the moment you decided to buy your very first duplex. Walk us through what your personal finances looked like, the fears you had to overcome, and the exact steps you took to close that first deal. We aren't here for quick sound bites today. We are here for the full sermon. I want to know the grit, the math, the tenant nightmares, and the financial triumphs. So, brother, welcome to the show. Tell us your name. Take us back to the absolute beginning. What made you invest in real estate? Walk us through the financial state you were in, the fears you had to conquer, and the exact story of how you closed on your very first duplex. The floor is yours.
So my life before I got into real estate was just kind of like everybody else, trying to find my niche in life. Because what I wanted to do is essentially buy back my time. I just wanted my time back. I just realized, the philosophy that I have in life is just what's really important for us is just our ability to do what we want when we want, and that doesn't necessarily always mean having the money to do it. But you know what I mean? I call myself the most productive lazy person that I know. Like, I want to be able to be lazy when I want to be lazy, and that might not even be being lazy. That might just be doing something productive. But it's on my terms, you know what I mean? So I have a job, and then I had a job at that time. I was hanging around with you and stuff, trying to get by, do what we can. But I always had a dream of just kind of owning rental income and finding other ways to just make money as I sleep. So, I mean, my bank account was at one point like everybody else, just paycheck to paycheck, just getting by until I just got up in 2017, I think, or maybe end of 2016. I actually don't recall. I drove from here to New York, and I got to see this country, and I got to see the real estate. And I love real estate. I love land. I love geography. I love maps. That's something I always loved. So just seeing properties and then just getting out of this California bubble allowed me to realize, like, hey, yo, bro, there's like 30 million people in California, but like there's still like 350 million people outside of here. They gotta live. They gotta rent. They got, generations that grew up and, they got dreams. So when I went on that trip, drove through 20 something states, it allowed me to see much of the United States, and that allowed me to think of ideas to invest in other places. So I ended up landing in Indianapolis, and the reason that was is because Indianapolis is about, I think, a day's drive from 75% of the American population, and I think like 65% of a day's drive to Canada. What that means is, like, within 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, you can get to DC, Texas, Oklahoma, Toronto, Chicago, New York, Boston, Florida. That's a lot of places, right? If you think about it, that's a majority of the states and cities that you just hear of on TV or sports team, So that was the spot I decided to land on, and one of the reasons I liked it was it has Butler University, it has Notre Dame, it has Indiana State, Indiana University, A lot of schools are around there, and then it's a developing sector. In Indy 500 is there, so there's a huge engineering core that was there. So I definitely see the future in Indianapolis. Honestly, like the more I think about it, it reminds me of San Jose. Raised in San Jose, Silicon Valley area, and I'm old enough to remember like the .com era. So it kind of reminds me of that because San Jose definitely grew a lot, and people don't know. There's places in Milpitas and San Jose where it was just fields where rats and birds were getting eaten by snakes, and rabbits were getting eaten by snakes and things like that. Like I remember running through that, biking through that as kids. Now those things are companies, they're, multi-billion-dollar companies, or like these new apartment complexes that now house multi-millionaires and things like that. So I feel like I landed in a city that would provide me that. And once I got that, the next process was getting a mortgage, especially living and working in California and trying to get a mortgage somewhere out in, a 4 or 5 hour flight, So from then on, I just was calling, looking for see to get a mortgage. And then once I found out like what it requires to get a mortgage, it took me some time to get my credit up, to save the money. I had to save tens of thousands of dollars to get that, right? And I didn't really have a high income at that time. It was just an entry-level job. So I had to work with what I had to work with, and I just had to be disciplined. And while I was doing that, I was filling my head with just nothing but real estate investment, reading like Bigger Pockets, books, by I think Brandon Turner and Michael Green, watching their podcast over and over, particularly this podcaster, her name escapes me right now, but she was this lady from Detroit, you know what I mean? She was a Denny's waitress, I think a high school dropout with like 2 kids. She was using her cash, basically her tax return every April. She was using that money to buy homes in Detroit, right? From about 2012 to like 2020. She was just buying it every year, right? So, by that time, she's had 8 properties, and she's paid them all off because they were dirt cheap. But people were she was renting it, and she owned the house outright after she fixed them up. And she was making like $7,000 a month, right? And she was still working as a waitress. This is just this girl, like she's a Denny's waitress with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old just doing that. So that's when I really turned the gear up, and I just started taking any job that I can, and then actually, getting me a decent job, because it actually, one of the reasons I was getting turned down was I had a lot of, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. So the issue with that is it's just a lot harder to get a mortgage because they don't know when your next income is gonna, come, especially when you're not making like a lot of money. So they tend to not to try to give you a mortgage, right? Especially for an investment. So I just went and got me like a little corporate job as a little, as a what would you call that? Like an insurance policy, I guess. And that sped up the process for me to go get a mortgage. And once the mortgages were coming in, the next was just finding that property. So I spent a lot of time flying back and forth, and then I just kind of pulled the trigger on that, and yeah.
The internet is full of false prophets showing off Lamborghinis, but we want the unvarnished truth. Pick one of your Indiana duplexes and break down the anatomy of the numbers for us. Walk us through the purchase price, the down payment, the mortgage, the maintenance reserves, and exactly what land in your pocket at the end of the month. Teach us the math.
Honestly, bro, like the level of confidence that I got, bro, because I like it just in all aspects of my life. Once I pushed through and I got that mortgage and I went and bought that property and I put a tenant in it, you know what I mean? Once that, like, it just gave me a different level of confidence. I don't know why. It's just every aspect of my life, because I know how hard that was. Like, it was hard for me, man. On the phone, you know what I mean? I was doing this pre-COVID, right? Like, I was trying to get that mortgage pre-COVID. It took me like a year to get that mortgage. COVID came, and like the end of 2020 is when I ended up getting that. When I ended up getting that, and my milestone was to buy a property before I turned 30, right? So I was pushing hard on that. I was just like, I got to get a property before I'm 30. And I was just pushing for that. So shout out to Greg over there at Wells Fargo, man. He helped me out a lot, And some people feel like, oh, you just got lucky and stuff like that. And then maybe I did get lucky, but the reality is I tried. That's why I got lucky. I put myself in that position for the dude to come through, and he helped me out on his way to retire, right? I still talk to him to this day. It's crazy, right? Like, this is just a loan officer from Wells Fargo that I met online. He lives somewhere in the Central Valley, and he just checks in on me. You know what I mean? So like, for me, like, I would have never been in that position, bro, if I didn't keep trying. And that's like the life lesson that I got from getting that. You know what I mean? And to me, like a short little downfall of it, or misconception people understand is, like, then people will be like, oh, you got some properties, bro, you balling. Nah, bro, like, especially like early on, bro, I done blew all my money on that. Like, everything I worked for, borrowed some, you know what I mean? And then I had to pay that back because people were like, what, you got a house and rent? I want my money, whatever, and pay. So for a very long time, bro, I had zero in my pocket. I was paycheck to paycheck because, the properties have to get fixed, right? And then I'm new to the game, so I'm not understanding, like, what to fix inside of the properties, because I don't know if, what the codes of that state require or what. So somebody calls me, hey, this is fixed. I'm like, oh, the right thing is to fix it, as opposed to not fixing it or maybe doing something else, right? Because I didn't have a property manager. Because I was, I was being cheap with it, right? Because a property manager is something now that I have, and I wish I got early on, because there's a lot of learning curves to go through, and when you get help, sometimes it helps out. But the issue is getting a property manager in itself is actually hard too, right? You get a lot of just, in this world, when you're dealing with a lot of people that are freelancers or contractors, you get all types of characters, man. There are people who can't keep a job, like a 9 to 5 in a way, right? They're hard workers, but they're on their own time a lot of times. So then you got to deal with that type of personality. So just trying and over to get a new property manager. I ended up getting PMI. Shout out to PMI. And they just made it much easier, using portals, creating tickets on there, telling me, like, leave money in there, and just they use that up for smaller expenses, so they don't have to bother me, right? They deposit money on there. Just communication is just a lot easier. But misconception is, like, people just thinking you just buy the property and then it goes up and money starts printing in. Nah, bro, you're gonna be in the red for a long time, bro, and you're gonna have to figure out how to deal with that and not foreclose on that when the house is not rented, and it's not gonna buy you a Lambo off a few rental properties. And honestly, when you start doing this and you start seeing money come in, and you get another one, you start seeing money come in, I promise you, a lot of you probably won't even think about a Lambo. The next thing you're going to think about is, how can I get another property? Because you're just going to love it. You're just going to love how, you planned something out, and then you saw how hard it was, and then you did it. It just feels good. Like, that feels better than driving a Lambo. You know what I mean? Just to me, I don't drive a Lambo, but, I've drove a new car, so to me, it's all the same after a couple of months. Car's a car.
There is a myth that rental income is completely passive. I want you to take us behind the scenes of your toughest operational crisis, whether it was a tenant nightmare, an eviction, or a massive maintenance disaster. Walk us through how it tested your finances, how you legally and emotionally resolved it, and the operational system you built to ensure it never happens again.
Yeah, I had a tenant, bro, my first tenant. She was, I forgot, she was with her boyfriend at the time, or they were broken up. But basically, the dude was harassing her, man. And I remember, I got her. She was cool. She was paying her rent. She just seemed like she was on top of her job, and all that. But, she had an ex or a boyfriend that she was beefing with and stuff like that. After a couple months of dealing with her, just having, her I'm like, why are you not paying rent? And she's kind of like, oh, I barely be at the house. Like were you working? She's like, no, I gotta be at my mama's house. Like, what happened? Like, my boyfriend or my ex is coming, harassing me there and there. And I'm just like, what? I mean, what does that have to do with, like, I get it, but like, but you got a lease, you got to pay that, So part of it, like, I live in California, so this is a 4-hour flight. I ended up going out there and installing a camera. And then I'm glad I did, because then, after she started paying her rent and stuff, her boyfriend came in and he broke my door down, her door down to get to her. And after that, like, I just felt bad, bro. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to be a slumlord. I don't want to force her to be there. That was just, you know what I mean? I'd rather, the way it looked, the dude might have offed her or something. Something bad was going to happen in the house. So I let her get away, I just said, go ahead, just break the lease. I'm keeping the money, the down payment she put down, and then bro, I had to fix the door, and then she lasted like 7-8 months. That's not passive, right? I mean, that, you know what I mean? Like, dealing with that. I'm in another state, dealing with back and forth while she's not paying rent, and she's pulling on my chest, bro. Like, I feel bad. She's a single mother. Dude's harassing her. And, I didn't have a property manager. That's another reason, right? Like, you don't have to hear some of these stories, right? There's somebody whose job is to deal with that, right? You know what I mean? So, if I heard that story and I still had a property manager, I might have still let her, like, get out of it, because I just don't want somebody dying in the house.
Buying one duplex is a milestone, but scaling to 3 duplexes, 6 doors total, require a shift in your financial DNA. Explain the mechanics of how you scaled. How did you use the equity, cash flow, or tax advantage of your first properties to fund the next ones? And how did your personal financial system have to evolve to manage an entire portfolio?
It's a big step, man. But honestly, bro, grabbing the second one was like, it wasn't that hard, bro. Like, honestly, the first one is always hard, man. I'm telling you, that first one, it's just hard, dude. It's just all types of fear. We're getting rejected. You know what I mean? Bank of America, local banks, all that, like, denied me. You know what I mean? Wells Fargo denied me. That's the funny part. But there's so many obstacles that you don't know about that just kind of, they hurt your feelings, bro. Like, they hurt my feelings. Telling you, basically, man, when you get a mortgage, bro, somebody's looking at you and, like, you could tell. They're telling you broke, bro. We ain't giving you no money. They're literally telling you you're broke, you're poor, you don't have any prospects of making future money. They'll ask you so many things. They get deep into your life, bro. Like, they'll go into, like, why you ain't finished school, almost. Like, they sound like you're talking to your grandma who's about to lend you some money. You know what I mean? So it's like, damn, bro, just talking to random people on the phone over that, going in, trying to get a loan. So once I knew the game and stuff like that, the second one was easy. And no, I didn't use the equity out of that. I just went and bought it. I bought it just down payment. On the second one, bro, like, I didn't even go see the house, dude. I FaceTimed, because now like you said, I have a system. I have a real estate agent there that I built a relationship with. I trust her. So she was just going house to house, checking it for me, doing, like, videos, like walking in, sending me 30, 45-minute videos of every corner of the houses, you know what I mean, and looking at it. Then she'll FaceTime me, she'll go back there, and I'm like, hey, go in that corner a little bit, like, let me see that, right? So I did a virtual, like, real estate deal on the second one. Never went and saw the house, bro. Like, I tell people that, they're like, what? I'm like, because for me, bro, it's a number. I put everything in the spreadsheet, and if, like, let's just, let me just give you, like, a basic number, bro. Like, if you buy a duplex out there or a multi-unit, and it's like, the mortgage is $1,000, and then, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and then in that side of the town, it's renting, 2-bedroom, 1-bath rent for $1,500. Now I got two units, so that's $3,000 if I fully occupy them, and out of that, $1,000 goes into the mortgage, right? So you know what I mean. Now you got $2,000 left, and then I got a property manager. They take 10% of that, right? So that's like $300. You give that to them. You still got $1,700 left, and then I have a bank for things I call like major expenses, just in case something in the future happens, right? Where I take about 15% of that income and it just automatically deposits into that. So that like stacks up, as well as my property management team also requires me to keep a pool for smaller expenses. So that's taken care of. So I know everything I get out of that is pure profit. It's pure profit, right? So I like that number I just gave you, right? 3,000 after mortgage, the properties is paid off, the property manager is paid off. Expenses, future expenses are also accounted in. That's right there is why I was able to buy a duplex, another duplex, right, without using the equity, because I put in future expenses while I was collecting the mortgage for a while, and then I was able to grab another one because I just used that money in order to just buy. I just used it as a down payment because before I knew it, it was a lot of money in there. I never had to. Luckily, I never had to use it to fix anything. Real. So I was like, oh, I got some money in here. I'm like, cool. I'm like, and I also stacked up this. I sold some Dogecoins and all that, and some crypto, and I was like, I got enough to go grab another one. I'm like, perfect, right? So it's I think it's expensive. It's important to look at the numbers. Like I'm a numbers guy. For me, the numbers have to make sense. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense to buy in the Bay Area because the mortgage is a lot higher than what rent is going for. You could buy better looking houses in better cities, but the numbers have to make sense. You know what I mean? Your ROI has to be above a certain percent. Like people tell you it's a 2% rule, right? I don't buy anything. Like I got a calculator that I got from biggerpockets.com. You really just an easy spreadsheet where you put in all the expenses a house can cost and then the income, and then it just gives you a percentage, like it's an ROI, or your return on your investment. If mine is not above 6-7%, really 10%, which is harder and harder to get now, I don't even look at the house, like at all. I see an address of the house, I go see what his mortgage is going for and the rent is going for in that area, and I just do a quick calculations. And if it's in that criteria, I just immediately start looking and call it, and then that's what I start from.
You chose the Midwest cash flow model over high-priced coastal markets. Look down the road for us. Paint the picture of what these three duplexes look like in 10 or 20 years, how they fit into your ultimate vision of financial freedom, and what prophecy or final piece of advice you leave for the person listening right now who is still terrified to buy their first door.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So for me, the way I gotta look at it is, I talk about this so much with people around me that, like, somebody just loves talking about stuff and doing stuff. You just can't help be like, damn, I want that type of excitement. So like my family is excited about it. Like my soon-to-be wife is excited about it. So for me, like I'm gonna make this investment my lifestyle, right? I'm gonna show people, look, bro, it's not easy, but there's a formula for this. If you want to get in, you can get in, right? So like just the immediate future, I'm grabbing one this year. It's 2026 June. I'm grabbing one this year. Lock it down. This is recorded. And then I'm probably going to grab another one with my pops as a co-investor, probably in March around my birthday. And then I'll probably get married next year or engaged. And me and my future wife are going to grab one. So that's 3 in the next 12 months that I'm going to grab, right? And I usually average about like $200 to $300 net income per door. So I mean, if you just look at that, right, I'm at 4 doors at like, let's say $250. So that's $1,000 like pure profit, that I make. So if I add a few more doors, I could get about another $2,000 to $2,500 pure income and everything that I do, right? So. Yeah, so I can get like, close to $2,500 in profit. Once I reach a certain amount of income, I'm probably going to switch off to getting a part-time job, just doing some like tax accounting, things like that. That way I could just fully focus on this and grow it. And like you were mentioning earlier, like some of my properties, I have less than like $60K to pay off. I have a lot of equity. I have a lot of equity, right? So once I have my bases covered, like my living expenses is covered, and I'm safe, then that's when I'm gonna start playing with the equity. Then I'm really, once you start hitting a certain mark, then it's just gonna be just mass production. I'm just mass produce it. Then I'm just gonna get, a triplex, a fourplex, a fiveplex, and then just keep going up. And I'm gonna keep it in the Midwest for the next 10, 15 years or so. And then even within that, I think I'm gonna start taking some equity out and start looking somewhere in California. Because I live here, I like the weather, this is the culture I grew up in. So I'm always gonna, try to bring the money back into California somehow, some ways. But I know I'm gonna have to use the money from out there, like the equity, to buy something here. But I'm not in a rush. I'm like I said, I run the number. Once the number starts making sense, right? Once rent it catches up to the mortgage somehow, some way, that's gonna make sense. Or I gotta go somewhere else, maybe Sac or Modesto, right? Like there's opportunities here in California.
And that, congregation, brings today's sermon to a close. A massive thank you to our brother in cash flow for stepping up to the pulpit and delivering absolute truth on what it really takes to build a real estate foundation in the American heartland. No false prophecies, just pure, unvarnished financial literacy. Before you step back into the world, let's give one final thanks to the partners who make this ministry possible. This episode was brought to you by Diamond Eye Visuals. If you are ready to stop blending in and start standing out, let Diamond Eye Visuals elevate your brand with world-class video production and media creation. Bring your vision to absolute clarity today. And by Token Teller, your premier financial companion. Don't wander the wealth wilderness alone. Use Token Teller to track your assets, master market data, and maintain ultimate transparency over your ledger. If today's message resonated with you, do not keep the blessings to yourself. Share this sermon with a friend, leave us a 5-star review, and subscribe so you never miss a week of financial gospel. Go forth, protect your cash flow, multiply your doors, and keep preaching profits. Bear fruit and multiply, putting the Most High before all else. We'll see you next week. Amen.